You're already looking for typos, aren't you? 2015, what a year it was for the gaming industry. 2015 can best be summarized as the kind of year where the bar must have been set pretty low because surprises were in no shortage this year. I mean, we had sudden hits, an absolute Sony steamroller at E3, a console from Valve that nobody seems to be talking about too much, the demonization of Konami, and even freaking PewDiePie got a game. Expectations last year were certainly messed around with like an amateur Gmod video. And here I am being the biggest damn Steam hipster while my channel rots from relative inactivity. As is standard for this channel, I feel like discussing 10 of my favorite games I tried out last year. The original release dates of these games doesn't matter. As long as I played it for the first time in 2015, it has a chance for a spot on this list. Unfortunately though, I didn't get much progress into every game I bought this year, so the list this year is a bit more compact. No worries though, as they'll all be listed as honorable mentions at the end. Do also keep in mind that while I'm trying to avoid as many spoilers as possible, a minor spoiler or two may slip here and there, but it shouldn't be anything worth getting worried over. And lastly, feel free to share what some of your favorite games of 2015 were in the comments section below. With the rules out of the way, let's not waste any time, mates. Let's get the annual tradition started.
Number 10.
How good it feels to revisit an old favorite. One of my funnest experiences with a video game was putting hours upon hours into Samurai Warriors 2 back on the PlayStation 2, but I always felt like the lackluster third installment killed off most people's interest in the series. Imagine my surprise then to hear about Samurai Warriors 4's announcement in 2014, much less getting to play it last summer. It's not exactly the same experience as Samurai Warriors 2, but it gets pretty damn close, and I'm glad Koei's picked themselves up after the guff that was the third game. Samurai Warriors 4 puts you in the shoes of several famous fighters from the 16th century Japanese history as you fight in famous battles from Yamazaki and Mikatagahara to the climactic showdowns at Sekigahara and Osaka Castle. Each character has their own questionably accurate and feasible weapon, as well as an attack chain bias that affects which type of combos they're best suited for. It's not difficult at all to pick up and play, and each character's fighting style feels unique in some way or another, so each faction and story mode gives you a nice overall variety to work with. What makes Samurai Warriors 4 especially stand out, though, is the officer tag system, which, while not as fleshed out as it was in Samurai Warriors Chronicles, allows you to switch between playing as two officers at the tap of a button, easily allowing you to reach a specific part of the battlefield without too much backtracking. Add in a Chronicle mode where you travel across Japan to document famous names of the era and participate in randomized small-scale battles, a custom character creation system that's well-detailed and fun to mess around with, and online multiplayer for each gameplay mode, and you have a solid hack and slash that will keep you entertained for quite a good while.
Number 9.
If I say the next segment belongs to a walking simulator, you won't leave me, will you?
I honestly had no idea what to expect from the Stanley Parable. It was an odd little birthday gift, and I went into it completely blind. Quite honestly, that's the best way to play a game like the Stanley Parable. Taking on the role of an everyman white-collar worker named Stanley, you decide to leave your office. Yes, that's about it plot-wise. But along every step of your tour of the office, you have a narrator telling you where to go, and you're free to do as he says, or do exactly the opposite of what he commands. Now you see the main appeal of the Stanley Parable. Each time you choose to follow the narrator's instructions or disobey, it affects which ending you'll get, and there's quite a plethora of endings to be had, including endings that expect you to take some rather unorthodox methods in order to even get to them. Speaking of, many of the narrator's quips also add to the oddity of the experience. Whether he's calling you out for picking the wrong option, reacting cynically to attempts at speedrunning, or even pointing out player inactivity, much of the game's enjoyment comes from the narrator's commentary, and it helps keep the experience from getting stale, at least for a while. The Stanley Parable isn't exactly a game I'd be pining to suddenly revisit or binge play, but for what it's worth, I enjoyed it quite a bit. It's simple, clever, and best experience the less you know about it. Just, good luck getting the art ending.
Number 8.
Don't Starve. It's a game about not dying.
That wasn't the best way to introduce it, was it?
Well, as simple as it can be said, Don't Starve is an indie game that revolves around survival. It's nothing new, especially since Steam has other survival games such as The Long Dark and DayZ, so what makes it special? Well, Don't Starve adds its own sense of charm through its rough, sketch-like art style and array of quirky characters who each have a special ability that changes up the gameplay in some way. Don't Starve's primary challenge is to see how many days and nights you can survive while maintaining both your hunger and your sanity. Restoring hunger requires scavenging in the randomly generated world you're thrown in, while restoring sanity requires gathering enough materials to craft new items, including tools, fires, and like any Steam game truly worth its merits, hats. You're free to customize the world's generation settings to make it more or less challenging, and the implementation of both official expansions and user-created mods opens the door to quite a bit of replay value. If I had to point out a few iffy bits, though, the high difficulty comes first, as it takes a few runs to really get into the swing of survival, especially when it comes to maintaining your sanity. And once you die, that's it. Your save file gets deleted, meaning that if you fell to something cheap or reckless, you have to start all the way from the beginning. Death does earn you points toward unlocking new characters at least, but having to repeatedly start from gathering twigs and flowers can wear down on the player's enjoyment. Still, Don't Starve is what you make of it, and if this piques your interest, I'm sure you'll enjoy the purchase.
Number 7.
Jules Verne's classic novel, Around the World in 80 Days, is a beloved piece of literature, but reading the book means you're just along for the ride. Indie developer Inkle Studios dared to make an interactive adaptation of the novel, and from that, we have 80 Days. 80 Days is just that, a more open-ended telling of the classic Jules Verne novel, but with a more noticeable steampunk twist. You serve as the attendant to one Phileas Fogg, who made a bet for £20,000 that he could cross the globe in 80 days, and now it's your job to handle the travel plans and expenses for every leg of the journey. For each city you stay in, you have the options to buy souvenirs to hopefully sell at a higher price in other cities, or exploring the city to learn about new travel routes and culture. The order of cities you travel through ultimately affects what twists and turns will await you, so no two playthroughs will be exactly the same. And that really adds to the game's replay value, as does the description of each city you visit. But otherwise, I do admit that this game doesn't really add much to that. Perhaps I may just be reminded of the old Globetrotter game, since they share a similar concept, traveling around the world to sightsee and whatnot. I get that it's based on a novel and all, but it really would have been nice to see a change in backgrounds as you explore each city, have some unique background music for each city, maybe showcase a landmark or two,
And maybe I just want to see Samarkand on that map.
Some of the limitations aside, if you're a fan of Jules Verne or any sort of globe-traveling adventure, 80 Days is an indie game that will definitely have you circumnavigating as much as you please.
Number 6.
You know, sometimes it's nice to go through some of your childhood games, including one I owned for quite a while but never could get to work on my older PC because I owned the most picky Windows XP in the world, and that was Sid Meier's Pirates. There, I said Meyer correctly, are you happy? It's a bit odd putting a game I've long been familiar with on this list, despite not ever trying it on a working PC until early last year, but it's definitely a treat worth the wait. Sid Meier's Pirates is essentially a remake of the 1987 PC classic, but also adding some of the elements from the attempted sequel Pirates Gold. You take on the role of a nobleman whose family has been kidnapped by the evil Marquis de la Montalban, and having escaped capture, you must sail through the Caribbean under the Spanish, English, French, or Dutch. From here, though, it's actually quite open-ended. You can choose to track your captured family members, sure, but you can also earn favor with European nations by sinking enemy vessels, courting governors' daughters, or capturing ports from other nations. Or maybe you just want to go to Mexico. Well, actually, that's a really stupid idea unless you're sailing with a letter of marque from Spain, but, your watery grave, mate. My point is that while Sid Meier's Pirates does have a story to pursue, it doesn't really force it on you. So you're free to do as you please on the seas, whether you want to help a European nation conquer the Caribbean while searching for clues of your family's whereabouts, or be a true pirate out for riches above all else while neglecting your lone mission.
You heartless bastard.
For a decently cheap game on today's market, Sid Meier's Pirates offers a decent amount of bang for your buck, from the naval travel and active combat to the turn-based city invasions and even small dishings of stealth and rhythm-style gameplay. As long as you've got your sea legs ready, there's plenty of adventure to be had in the new world.
Number 5.
If you're the kind of person that enjoys ruining your friendships over a game of Mario Party or Dokapon Kingdom, well, 100% orange juice was made just for you to subjugate your Steam friends to. You sadist. 100% Orange Juice is a party game that revolves around taking turns moving your character across a board, but you're free to choose whether you win by collecting stars or by defeating other players and enemies. Both victory conditions have their drawbacks, though. Winning through battles requires a decent bit of luck and frequent card use, while winning by stars requires smart use of cards and avoiding fights. Each character has different stats in battle, as well as a character-specific card called a hyper, these factors deciding what strategy to use for each character, as well as which victory type is easier to obtain. Seeing as this game's meant to be a crossover between 3 series, as well as one with a good number of DLC characters, it's pretty easy to find a character that suits your playing style. Add in the addition of character colors and bonus hair colors, and you can easily make your personalized character to get utterly trashed by your own terrible luck. The game also has a simple story mode, though it really just serves the sole purpose of unlocking more characters to play as. The real highlight of this game is, without a doubt, the online multiplayer, where you can play against Steam friends and strangers alike, all while creating enough salt to bankrupt the God-rich salt mine.
Okay, I'm sorry, that was a stupid joke, and I knew that. I'm sorry.
It might not sound like much, but that's really the beauty of 100% Orange Juice. It's a great game to play with friends, even if that's mainly just to see everything dissolve into an induction ceremony for the Church of RN Jesus. Just remember, Popo always wins.
Number 4.
Ben Donaldson, you beautiful bastard. Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate was a game I honestly had little interest in to start out with, but after going out and giving it a try, I can definitely say that I'm glad I chose the better option. As the title states, the Monster Hunter series is all about taking down brutal behemoths several times your size, and using the materials you get from each defeated foe to forge new weapons or armor to help you either take out a monster more quickly by exploiting its weaknesses, or simply giving you the extra bulk you'll need to survive a nasty encounter. What Monster Hunter 4 in particular brings to the table is the height system, where both the player and target's respective heights affect how monsters behave, and both players and monsters can use the bonus height to their advantage. Learning the attack pattern for each target monster becomes a crucial element of the gameplay, especially when the shape of the terrain plays a major role. The learning curve is definitely against newer players, but not to the point of being brutally unfair. In fact, I went in completely blind and didn't meet my first true opponent until facing, and dying repeatedly against, the Basarios.
Or maybe that's because I was being overly vanilla by using a sword and shield.
Speaking of, that's another strong point of the Monster Hunter series, the large array of weapon types at your disposal, from your traditional greatswords, bows, and lances, to the 2 new weapon types in Monster Hunter 4, the Insect Glaive, which allows you to attack alongside a bug companion, and the Charge Blade, which can morph between a heavier sword and shield combo and an axe. It's definitely not a game for everybody, as the difficulty curve, bare minimal story, and frequent amounts of grinding make apparent, but hey, if this sounds like fun to you, well, more power to you. I didn't think I'd get much out of the game, but I've dumped quite a bit of time into it. Certainly not as much as others, but enough to say that Monster Hunter is a series you really ought to at least try, and Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate was, to me, a good introduction. Maybe it'll be the same for you. Just be ready to sharpen that blade, cook some meat, and put up one hell of a fight.
Number 3.
Whenever you play an RPG, what's your favorite role to play? The heroic royal knight, perhaps? The pastoral chap who ends up saving the world? Maybe an amnesiac mage who joins an army? Nah, screw all that crap. I want to be the shopkeeper! And thus, you have been introduced to Reciteer and Item Shop's Tale, a quirky little Dojin RPG brought to the West by Carpe Fulga. As the concept implies, this game follows Reset, the daughter of a shopkeeper who has mysteriously disappeared, causing the taxes to pile up and forcing Reset to run the shop out of debt. You're expected to pay off the debt in week-by-week increments, earning money by selling items secondhand, or hiring explorers to crawl through dungeons to look for items to sell, kinda like the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games. Being the shopkeeper, you get to set the price of what you're selling, but it tends to venture into high-risk, high-reward territory if you're feeling zealously capitalistic. Negotiating good deals, however, especially profitable ones, raises your merchant rank and helps you find rare items more easily. And believe me, that's a necessary advantage, because these payment deadlines can easily creep up on you. And should you fail to pay just one weekly fine, you're back to the beginning of the story. But at least you get to keep your items and merchant ranks, so, gung-ho, capitalism ho! What really sells... No, wait a second. I'm sorry. What really makes this game more appealing is its sharp wit. For a game that looks like super kawaii, that's mine, yeah. On the surface, it has a wonderfully cynical sense of humor. I don't want to spoil much, since it's better experienced blindly, but I do love it when RPGs take a minute to sit back and absolutely satirize themselves. It's a quirky little niche game with a good sense of humor and a concept that easily allows it to stand out in the vast sea of RPGs out there. So what are you waiting for? Go and make Adam Smith proud!
Number 2.
Are you tired of seeing this one yet?
So I mentioned at the beginning of this video that 2015 was a year of surprises, and no doubt Undertale was one of the biggest. A basic search on Tumblr should make that pretty damn evident. Regardless, I can't deny that there's something special about Undertale, both as an experience and a game. Undertale tells the story of a human who finds themselves stuck in an underground world full of all manner of distinctive creatures. As you travel through the mysterious subterranean realm, you start learning more and more about the inner workings of the game's plot, all while your choices are carefully recorded and remembered all the way to the credits. Stylized as an RPG similar to Earthbound, with hints of similar indie games like Yume Nikki and Off, Undertale's morality system mainly focuses on the combat, where you have the option to defeat enemies the traditional way, or spare them at the cost of earning 0 experience. Each weapon you find has a different way it's supposed to be used in combat, making attacking more rhythmic and engaging than it would be in most other RPGs. On the other hand, sparing each enemy requires a different series of actions, and this puzzle-like element to the gameplay, as well as each enemy having a unique attack pattern that you have to dodge in real time, definitely keeps everything fresh and keeps you on your toes whenever you reach a new area. Most of why I respect Undertale comes down to how much it watches and remembers from the player's actions. Some of the slightest choices can largely affect the game's cast, even if it's long after the time you made your choice. And these choices all ultimately influence how the game ends. While I'd really love to go into greater detail, the last thing I want to do is spoil this game, since it's built primarily around the player's initial reactions, and given the loudmouth nature of the internet and part of the fandom, playing Undertale as blindly as possible is something of a blessing, and I'm glad I got to personally experience it this way.
Number 1.
Let's talk about Civilization 5. As far as surprises go, I think this is definitely the game I underestimated more than any of the others on this list. I paid $7 for the base game during the Steam Summer Sale, expecting a simple time waster, but stuck around to pay full price for all the DLC and expansions, because this game is worth every hour of gameplay and every damn dime. In Civilization 5, you play as one of a large variety of historical figures, with the goal of starting a nation from the grounds up. As you develop your future empire, you'll come across other nations and city-states to interact with. Whether you want to actively trade with them or declare war on sight is all up to you. Victory can be achieved through conquering the world, becoming the dominant cultural force, being elected as the world leader, being the first nation to build spaceships, or simply outcompeting rival nations when time runs out. Each playable nation is suited to obtain certain victory types more easily, so knowing your strengths and weaknesses will strongly influence how you play and interact with other nations. As to be expected from a strategy game like this, multitasking becomes crucial to obtaining victory, especially in the expansions where religion and trade routes are added to further affect your interactions with other nations and city-states. Speaking of these nations, each behaves differently, often like their real-life counterparts. Augustus Caesar will try to wipe out smaller empires, Sejong will focus on scientific development, Darius I will focus on expanding his borders, etc, etc, etc. It's a lot to take in, and it may sound like a major turn-off, but Civilization 5 comes with both a wide variety of difficulty settings and the ability to easily switch between manual and automatic resource management, allowing novices and veterans alike to enjoy the game and all of its one more turn moments. There's a great sense of satisfaction in watching the time you spend initially building farms and researching sailing, progressively turn into mass-producing tanks, mapping out the world, and firmly establishing yourself as a world power. With a plethora of nations to play as and against, a number of bonus scenarios based on historical events, Steam Workshop compatibility that opens the door to so many new ways to play the game, an in-game encyclopedia for the fellow history nerds out there, and a soundtrack full of downright incredible samples both from across time and around the world, Civilization 5 is a full package. I know it's cliche to end a segment like this by saying, oh, this game is one of my favorites both of the year and of all time and whatnot, but I really can't avoid that with Civilization 5. I've invested an incredible number of hours into building empires in the pursuit of uniting the world, falling in love with the beautiful soundtrack that changes based on who you're playing as, enriching myself in the sheer educational potential it holds, and in general enjoying one grand experience of a game. I've said that this year was full of surprises, and Civilization 5 has been the surprise that keeps on giving. I'm the Kitsune Hawk, and you tell me, will you build a civilization that can stand the test of time?
情けない愚か者め。今から叩きのめしてやるぞ。
You are made of stupid.